So, hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be joined today by Gordon and Nicolina from GlycanAge. At the UK's National Innovation Centre for Ageing, Nika, we've scouted GlycanAge as one of the trailblazer companies for our Longevity as a Service programme. Gordon, perhaps you could start by explaining, for our kind of audience today, why are glycans so relevant and what's your idea?
So glycans are a class of molecules which are practically everywhere, and they're involved in the vast majority of biological processes. Starting from the blood groups, ABO blood groups are chemically glycans. And if we go a little bit back in evolution, bacteria like E. coli, they have 5,000 genes. Humans have approximately 20,000 genes. But we are not only 4 times more complex than a single bacteria. We are thousands or millions times more complex than bacteria. And one of the ways how we achieve this is through post-translational modifications of proteins. And one of these modifications are glycans. So practically everything what is going on in our body, aging, diseases, involve glycans. And it is not that glycans are more important than proteins or DNA. Just glycans have not been studied as much as proteins and DNA. So we know a lot about our genes, we know a lot about proteins, enzymes, and everything. We know quite something about epigenetics, but we don't know enough about glycans. And this is what makes glycans special, that we still have to learn a lot about glycans, and we can find many useful ways how we can apply glycans in different situations.
Fantastic. So where are you at with your services? So Nicolina, maybe you could tell us a little bit about, what your present company, GlycanAge, and where you are with your future research and the current kind of pipeline of activity.
Yeah, Lynn, thank you for having us first. Really appreciate it. So to simplify it, we measure how well your immune system is aging. So we all know we have an immune system, and glycans actually regulate this inflammatory process or low-grade chronic inflammation, and it's something we call inflammaging. So the first time Gordon's research group published this was about 10 years ago, and now after 10 years of research and how to apply this biomarker for aging, we are commercial. And there's a side where you can try this as a consumer, but also you can use it in the clinic as a doctor. And it measures how fast you're aging biologically, and then we help you slow this down so you can have more years of health.
So it is really important that as a consumer, you can get to know this information. I mean, a big part of this is about democratizing access to this kind of knowledge. Tell us a little bit more about your service model so that consumers can actually kind of be able to understand kind of glycans in a little more detail and what it means for them, because you do have quite an intriguing and fascinating subscription model.
Yeah, so it's a very complex science, and we try to simplify it. So the challenge is always getting this to a level that anybody can understand this. And this starts with the biological age. So that as a concept, anybody can understand. You have your chronological age, which is when you're born, and you have your biological age, which is how well you're doing through time. So how many extra years of health you would have. And it starts by doing the first measurement, so you can see where you are as a baseline. And then with the subscription, we offer retesting. So you have advice from our team. They give you an action plan, which is all lifestyle related, because we can unlock a lot of years of health by adjusting our lifestyle and having this early feedback that the things we're doing are actually adding or taking away from our future health. Mm-hmm. And we do this both by having simple reports and dashboards. They're available to the consumer, but also you have a telemedicine side where you can talk to a real person and have them give you personalized advice on what to do. So that's how it works at the moment. It'll get more and more simple and automated with time, but even now we have very good response from our customers.
So tell us a little bit more about that. What is the feedback from your customers, and maybe a little bit about kind of the ethical principles in terms of how you kind of share that information with your kind of customer base?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the ethical side, I think the biggest concern for customers is data. So from the beginning, all our customers own their data. We give them both the full raw data and the reports where we simplify it, but they are the data controllers. And that's a big part in consumer. You want to know that your data first is yours, and then that it's secure, that your privacy is protected, and so forth. So I think that's on the ethics side. And what the feedback is, first, it's something new. So you are surprised with what the result is. It may be what you expect. It could be what the exact opposite of what you expect. Or so there is a emotional component to it, because it's age, it's a biological age, and although it shouldn't be, it can be like a personal insult. So if it's not what you want it to be, there is a little bit of a emotional side to it, which is why we add in the service where we guide you through that and help you actually do the right action steps. So you bet, because the main benefit of it is not having this information early, so you can do something now, so you have the payback in years' time. But I actually leave it to Gordon to explain, because he has a great analogy with the car.
You mean the way I explain glycans as a modification of a car? Yeah. So, biology is complicated, and people really have problems understanding it. And for glycans, even scientists and physicians have problem understanding what they do, because it's not part of a regular curricula if you want to become a scientist or a physician. So I usually try to explain it in a way that the life is happening at the molecular level, and we have many small molecular robots which do all the work. They're proteins. And if you think about the car, so car is something which is supposed to move us from a point A to a point B. And a basic protein would be a kind of a board with the wheels and an engine, and it will move from point A to point B. And everything on top of that, nice seat, windows which open, rear view mirrors, the lights, or anything which we enjoy in our cars. This is not a basic element of a car. It's an addition. And the glycans are this type of an addition from a protein. So the proper glycan will convert this basic engine into a supercar. And if you put the wrong glycans, then you have a car which will break down every couple of miles. So the way I imagine these glycans to be is a modification, an addition to this basic protein structure, which decides what will the protein do. For example, our GlycanAge test that Nicolina was mentioning is based on glycans on immunoglobulin G, so our antibodies. Antibodies are our main weapon against a foreign invader. So if a foreign molecule comes in, we have antibodies which will recognize this molecule. But while we are developing these antibodies, we do not know whether this foreign molecule is enemy or maybe food, because the foreign object could be a virus or could be a tropical fruit which we never tried before. And our immune system has to make a decision whether this foreign object is an enemy, and then it will attack it, it will cause inflammation and kill it, or will it simply ignore it? Because we don't want to have an immune response to the food we are eating or to the dust or whatever that we are breathing. And glycans make this decision. So glycans and immunoglobulins can make immunoglobulin either a pro-inflammatory, a killer, or an anti-inflammatory. So it is even suppressing inflammation. And as we are getting older, and remember, 150 years ago, very few people were living beyond the age of 35.
Absolutely.
So there is no evolutionary pressure to keep us alive in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s or longer. So the errors accumulate. antibodies are becoming more and more pro-inflammatory. And if we make it even worse with an unhealthy diet, unhealthy lifestyle, then it can go faster. So our antibodies from our main defender becomes one of the major threats for our health because they're promoting inflammation. And this low-grade chronic inflammation is underlying the majority of chronic diseases which we have nowadays, things like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, inflammatory diseases. Inflammation has a very important role in all of them.
And this is just so important for, you know, your average consumer, your average person to understand, and yet it's not always that accessible. You've explained it incredibly clearly there today, Gordon, but, you know, generally, how do you in GlycanAge, how do you engage kind of customers to help you perhaps articulate this and design some of your services so that it's very kind of user-friendly?
So science-wise, we do majority of our research in a different path than with the GlycanAge customers, because we collaborate with researchers who have done different clinical studies in different topics. We have already analyzed over 150,000 people from some of the best phenotyped and genotyped cohorts. And what we have learned that glycans change up to a decade before the disease actually develops. Because disease is an endpoint. This is when all the compensatory mechanisms are broken, and then something stops to function, and we feel pain or irritation, and then we ask for help. And in majority of cases, this is beyond the point of no return. You never get cured. You get your symptoms get alleviated, you get some drugs which keep you functioning, but you are not healthy again. While if you look at the glycans will show an advanced warning up to a decade before. So 10 years before you get a heart attack, a stroke, a diabetes, arthritis, we already see changes in glycans. So idea through GlycanAge is that you give people an early warning saying, you know, you are doing something wrong. You should consider changing something in your lifestyle, because remember, 70% of the complex diseases are lifestyle. Diet, exercise, sleep, stress, and so on. Genetics is a very small component. So we have early warning 10 years before something happens. And then again, you get a feedback whether what you are trying is working or not. Because, for example, my GlycanAge is not good. And when I learned it was not good, I tried to kind of sweat it out. I was hiking for hours in the mountains, and it didn't really help much. Over-exercise is not good. Unfortunately for me, the key problem is that I like food. I eat too much.
Me too.
So I can try to sweat it out. I sleep enough. Well, and stress, of course. Stress, we cannot avoid stress in academic life. But for example, I know that I don't have to kill myself in a gym. You know, a few times a week, 1 hour in a gym is more than enough for me exercise-wise. I have to control other aspects of my life. Maybe, Nina, you have some other examples of what people are doing once they learn about their GlycanAge.
And this is what's fascinating, isn't it? Go on, Nicolina, please.
No, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, that I just think this is what's so fascinating about, you know, the work that you're doing, because longevity as a service for us is about giving people that personalized, tailored information that they need in order to understand what is happening in their body, their circumstances, and then make positive changes and get the feedback. And, you know, that's such a powerful step change from kind of very generic advice, which, you know, what is right for one person is not necessarily right for another. So, you know, I think that's what's really, really important. And, you know, Nicolina, you know, what's your kind of,
maybe
your take
now when you open this topic, let me tell you just one more example, and then Nicolina can go with the real world examples. So we studied 1,000 people on 5 different diets for a year. So we had samples at the beginning, after I think 2 months, and then after 8 or 12 months. And these 1,000 people were on a different diets, which were prescribed by somebody. And what we learned from that experiment, this is still unpublished, we are just about to submit the paper, is that there is no standard human. There is no standard diet which works for everybody. Some people cope well with carbohydrates, other people should not eat carbohydrates. Some people cope well with a high protein diet, other people don't cope well with a high protein diet. And if you try to apply a one approach to everybody, there will always people who will get hurt and people who will benefit. And what we have seen with this experiment is that with each of the diets, some people improved and some people did not. And this is not something what you see if you just look at the BMI index. You don't see it even if you measure different physical features of a body like oxygen consumption and so on, because this is just measuring one aspect of whatever you are measuring, while these glycans, at least the ones which we measure, are kind of regulators of low-grade chronic inflammation. And it is this low-grade chronic inflammation which we want to get rid of, because this is the long-term damage causing. And maybe, Nina, you have some excellent examples of the real people doing something.
We have many examples. I think at the beginning, a lot of our customers were health enthusiasts or biohackers. So we would generally get people who are extremely healthy. So they will come back with very good results, but then also some of them will come back with very bad results. And if you look at that, there will be the picture of health. And that's where the problem is, because all of this health, all of this, everything that we're following in terms of health advice is very much general. And a lot of times it doesn't work for us as individuals. So a lot of times when they're too high, they're on the wrong diet, they're over exercising, they're overdoing something that they believe is good, and investing your time, money, and energy into it, and it's actually damaging their health. So it's doing the exact opposite of what they're intending to do. So it's a nice wake-up call, learning to change a behavior for life, because it's permanent. And then you have this other group of people which know that they're not living 100% healthy. So they want this warning in a way to get extra motivation to, and it does work as that as well. If you can measure the damage you're doing, and you can measure how much you can offset that damage by doing little changes, which can be increasing your exercise, sleep, reducing calories, losing a bit of weight, if that works for you, because you can also, there is cases where you are underweight, or you may be slightly overweight and it's not creating inflammation for you. So we're very individual in finding out what is your current way of life doing for you and as an individual, and putting that initial stamp, and then everything you're investing in the future, you're customizing that to your own biology instead of just randomly following some advice that you read somewhere or somebody recommended. And the only way we can validate it works for us is to actually measure how all of that affects our biology.
Yeah, so it's personalized and tailored to each person, which is brilliant. And you're clearly working internationally. So are there any differences between the markets that you operate in terms of appetite for this and customer feedback?
Yes, we work with clinics and consumers. And in the UK, because this was our first market and we had a lot of awareness here, majority of our consumers are UK based. Majority of our clinics are US based, and their consumers are different. So in the US, they're very much ready to pay for out-of-pocket health, because this is still not paid by insurance. So their functional medicine, integrative medicine, they're much bigger practices than you would find in the UK, and the attitude is slightly different. So because they can't rely on this government healthcare as we do in Europe and the UK, they're more prepared to invest in their health early, and would even have like additional funds they made for their health, and they actively spend it on out-of-pocket health. While sometimes in Europe, we rely on the healthcare system and change when it's failed us. So when something already failed us, then we change our attitude and we do the opposite. We fully don't trust it and try to do everything ourselves, which is also wrong. It's about this combination of the two. And there is, we are slightly more women. So 60% of our customers are women.
Mhm.
And our biggest cohort of customers is 40s to 60s. So that's when you're most aware of aging in a way.
Yeah.
And then what's interesting, for men, it's more broad in terms of age range. So I initially thought that there would be women from 30s onwards, but actually there's a little bit more men under 30s and early 30s at the moment. But this could also be our work around menopause, which brought a lot of awareness and yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the work on menopause, because your latest research does target menopause, and from our work on Femtech, we're seeing a huge amount of innovation on that topic. So tell us a little bit about that, why you focused on menopause, and you know, a little bit about your plans.
So I can tell you how we stumbled on it from the consumer or user side, and then I'll leave to Gordon to talk about how the science is progressing. But when we hit the market, we're first research product which became commercial, and we always knew there's a gender difference in aging. So we can see that with men, they accumulate this lower chronic inflammation very linearly with age, and for women there was a curve. So where they had less chronic inflammation in reproductive age, and then they had a switch, but we assumed that this was to do with menopause because of the age range, but didn't have any concrete menopause data. So when we met our actual customers and got to understand what's actually going on with them, because in research you don't have this contact with the customers, and you know what you know, but you generally assume. We learned that yes, they're having these big changes or this acceleration in biological age, but actually happens before menopause, because menopause is currently diagnosed retrospectively. So it's diagnosed at the end stage. Once you haven't had a cycle for a full year plus 1 day, then you are officially in menopause. But actually it starts up to a decade. It can start up to a decade before then, as your hormones are declining early, and that's called perimenopause. So we would start to have clients who are having this acceleration, and we would ask, could this be related to menopause? And they would tell us, no, I have a regular cycle, I'm not in menopause. So then when we learned that, we went back to research, and I'll let Gordon tell you what we did recently with twins.
Yep. So a couple of years ago, we did some lab studies looking at the molecular level, and we showed that estrogen, the hormone, is very important regulator of IgG glycosylation. And we have known for decades that women are in a way protected from overinflammation in a reproductive age, and then in pregnancy things changes a lot. But nobody looked at the IgG glycosylation. Nobody looked at the glycans, because we have technology to look at glycans for a little bit more than a decade. And then we learned that estrogen is very important regulator. But the problem with the hormone levels in perimenopause is that they vary widely. In a period, you can have a very high estrogen level, then they go very down and up and down. It's kind of a crazy period with fluctuation in the hormone levels. And if you're just measuring hormone levels, you don't get reliable information. You have to measure it day after day after day for months to see what is going on. And actually, glycans, since they are regulated by estrogen on a molecular level, and immunoglobulin has a half-life of a couple of weeks. So glycans are actually integrating the hormone levels for a couple of weeks. So by measuring glycans in one time point, you are seeing average concentration of estrogen in the past couple of weeks. And then what we have seen is that in a premenopause, so in the regular cycle period, women age with a relatively constant pace. So unless something horrible happens, like some disease or some acute infection or something, they generally move very slowly, even less than a year per year. Mm-hmm. And then this accelerates rapidly at one point when the cycle is still regular. So it's not menopause. It's just this entrance of this wild period of hormones going up and down. So it seems, and of course we have to do more research. We only published a couple of papers on the topic. we see that glycans start to change much faster. And just a couple of weeks ago, we published a large study together with Tim Spector from the King's College London, where we tracked 2,000 twins for 20 years in 3 time points. So we had 2 time points when there was a perimenopause in between. And we have seen that between these 2 time points where the perimenopause occurred, the aging was more than 2 times faster than in other time periods. And this was still a very wide bracket. It was bracket between 7 and 10 years. And so for this entire period, this aging was faster. So what we are currently now trying to develop as a diagnostic biomarker, and you know, if you want to move to formal diagnostics, this is highly regulated, it takes a lot of time. We want to develop this IgG glycome composition as a diagnostic biomarker for perimenopause. But the good thing is that the GlycanAge as a company is already measuring these very same glycans, and they're actually reporting them as a part of the report. So even though this is still not formally a diagnostic biomarker, you can have this measured through a GlycanAge, and then you can have your menopause specialist looking at the data and interpreting the data and helping you understand what is actually going on. So it's a kind of shortcut to people actually being able to benefit from something, which is still not formally diagnostics, but can be interpreted by the healthcare specialist and help you understand what is going on.
So that kind of longitudinal vision is really important to give the detailed information about when and how to act. And Nikolina, are there any other services then that are related to women that are in your horizon?
So at the moment, we are focusing on perimenopause. We haven't done any research in fertility, but that's an interest area. And of course, autoimmune diseases in women, and they are more prevalent. But these are all research side. I just want to add in for perimenopause, why it's important is because we don't have any diagnostics at the moment. You're just shocked when it happens. You don't know what's going on. And the problem is that the symptoms, because we have estrogen receptors everywhere in the body, it ranges from 40 to 70 different symptoms you can have, which are related to perimenopause, which can often be diagnosed as the wrong thing. So you are often misdiagnosed with depression, anxiety, maybe a burnout, fibromyalgia. So what we see, you have women who've had 3-4 different diagnoses in the last 5-6 years that have been trying to figure out what's going on. And then they realize it's related to their hormones and menopause. They have access to the right type of therapy, and all these misdiagnoses they had for years go away. But it's insane that we can't predict it, and that pretty much any woman you talk to because the majority of women have symptoms are shocked and are not prepared for it and are misguided for years without having access to the right tools to actually help them. So that side is something we're really passionate about. That's really important. We see it in our customers already, and would like to make it as broadly accessible as possible.
So yeah, because knowledge is power, isn't it? And actually, as you said, just being able to make sense of what is happening as early as possible so that you can actually both understand it and do something about it. It's just incredibly important. And so, you know, Nika, you're such a pleasure to work with. You know, we really enjoyed kind of working with you to date. And what can organizations like us, like Nika, do to help, you know, organizations like yours thrive?
You're already doing a lot, so I really appreciate all the support we're getting. But just having access to this community of companies who are doing similar things for us to find ways how we can collaborate, work together, and help each other, because it is a space which is still a little bit novel and needs a bit more exposure, and collaboration is a very good way for us to get there together. Another thing is hiring. So we really want to hire more locally. We're just starting it now, but you are in a great location just next to Newcastle University, which gives us hopefully access to a lot of talent that's just coming up into the working market.
Yeah. And there's one additional very important information which we learned particularly in the last 2 years of pandemics, and that this is it is very important to have some kind of objective way to see the real information, because there is so much misinformation on the internet. And nowadays everybody goes to internet. So the moment you get the diagnosis or any kind of idea, first you Google, and then you get all types of crazy, really crazy suggestions and advices, which for a layperson is very difficult to differentiate. So, and I think it's important for an institution like yours to be kind of accrediting body, you know, saying, you know, this is backed by the real science. You know, these guys are supported by us because we know that what they are doing is the real science. It's not kind of snake oil or something which people are just trying to take your money. It's really backed by up-to-date science. And I think academic institutions, institutions linked to the academic institutions are important because, you know, we cannot fully trust our governments. You know, governments have their own agendas. We definitely cannot trust the internet community because, you know, who knows who is there. We cannot fully trust big pharma because they have their own interests. It's actually academic community which has to find a ways to find the real truth out there. And we are not there yet. Academic community also has their own problems in finding the real truth. But I think we have to work together to find the ways how people can learn on a single patient basis, meaning me. You know, I'm not the same as any of two of you.
Yeah.
But if I go to an NHS, I'm just a Homo sapiens. I get the same treatment like anybody else. So, and nobody's really interested in me. You know, who would be interested in me if there's 8 billion other me's on this planet? So it's only me interested in me. And I have to find a way how to collect information, how to be able to learn about myself and help myself.
It's a big change, isn't it? And it's so true that, you know, given that everything is, as you demonstrated today, it's so personal. It has to be so tailored to each individual. How then you actually make sure that everybody has access to the best possible evidence about themselves and then can actually have support to change lifestyle and understand what they need to do. It's going to be a real step change for the future, but a very, very exciting one in terms of being able to prevent a lot of problems that, you know, as you said, are currently too late when by the time people get to know about it. So just so important. And what do you see about the future? What do you see as the next 1, 3, 5 years of the priorities for you and for healthy longevity?
I can add in. So when we look at this IgG glycan, there's actually a lot of different associations with many different conditions. So with time, we really want to unlock as much information that we can. So when you do a genome test, they can report a lot so that we can actually give you a lot more of this information and that it's something you are more familiar with. Because if we can tell you your metabolic risk or cardiovascular risk, that will be more motivational to the average person than just the biological age, because biological age is a different concept. Menopause is something that we are more familiar with, but as we get to these conditions that you are very familiar with, because you have them in your family, and we can tell you early that there may be something you can change to prevent them, or this may be somewhere where you have an increased risk, not right now, but in the future, and you can even moderate how this risk is changing for you, then that will be very powerful, because I think that can motivate everybody to do something on time rather than for us to wait until a disease happens and then respond once we're already symptomatic. So that's a long-term view. It's a hard one. So it's going to take a while until we can make claims which are because they have to go through heavy regulation, but that's the long-term goal. So we can really unlock this full value that we already see with good principles. So we're not over-diagnosing or scaring you, but we're giving you the right actionable information at the right time so you can preserve your health for longer.
Absolutely, and can all live kind of better lives for longer. So Nicolina, Gordon, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure for us to be on this journey with you at GlycanAge, and we look forward to kind of continuing to work with you on all that's ahead, and to see you flourish at this exciting time. It's such important work, and we're very, very happy to be working with you in our kind of longevity as a service program. So thank you.